I think Stephen would be appropriate for the podcast. Stephen, please.
Stephen, welcome to the Astroben podcast. How are you?
I am fine, Ben. It's a pleasure to talk with you today. Look forward to it. I've been to the UK many times, particularly London. Spoke all over the UK years back, and look forward to coming again.
Fantastic. Can't wait to have you there. So I'm actually in the US at the moment, recording over Thanksgiving week. So thank you so much again for coming on in over the course of this week, which is great. But look, let's jump straight in there because I really wanted to talk to you. I'm fascinated on the Astroben podcast, not just about space, but also asking the big questions of the universe. And one that has come up quite a few times with various guests is, are we alone in the universe? Where are the aliens? And I've had the pleasure of speaking to some great guests in the past, such as Avi Loeb and Tom DeLong, um, who, shall we say, are more than open-minded about the possibility of extraterrestrials. And I love talking and thinking about it. And you were one of the top people I wanted to chat to about the subject. So you're definitely an expert in the area. So perhaps let's jump straight in there. What do you believe that the US government knows about extraterrestrials that we as the general public don't know?
What is the government? Okay. Um, we have quite a bit of evidence relating to the government's engagement of this issue. Now, in that particular area, though, it's tricky because the government has gone to great lengths to classify very deeply everything that it does with this issue. But it gets worse than that because beginning formally in 1953, but really informally in 1947, at the Roswell events, the government made a decision that this was a national security matter of the highest classification, which hard to argue with that. And they have gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure that the public's fascination with it and engagement of it would be contained. Now, by contained, I mean this: the government has a lot of activity and classified national security stuff, which is completely classified. No one knows about it. And if you were to release some documents or something about it, you would pay a heavy penalty. Everyone knows that. What's different about this is that you can't classify or make secret the extraterrestrial presence because they can go and do anything they want. They can fly where they want. They can go underwater. They're being seen all around the world, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of sightings with tens of thousands reported. And so what do? You can't classify that. You can't make it secret. So what you do is you contain it. You keep it from becoming a formal thing. And that's what they did. I came to call that the truth embargo. It's a term that I came up with to replace, I felt, an inappropriate term, UFO cover up, back around 2000. And so this embargo is still in place. So, given that they have embargoed the issue from the public and classified the hell out of it, only have a somewhat sketchy idea of what they have or what they've done. Here's what I can say with confidence, and I don't use the word belief. This is what I'm convinced of by the evidence. It's not a belief issue. The Roswell was exactly what the key researchers have said it was. In 47, they obtained a crash vehicle. They obtained four, at least I think four dead bodies, one live ET, non-human intelligence from somewhere, right? Uh, and since then, there's decent evidence. There's been a few other crashes, some additional crash vehicles obtained, maybe even some evidence that some that have crashed outside of the U.S. Were then given to us because the country where it happened just didn't want to deal with it, and the U.S. is, of course, the appropriate entity. Um, so we know that they've been tracking the phenomena for 70 some years. Certainly, if they have crash vehicles, which I'm convinced they have, they've studied them down to the molecule. I don't think anybody would argue with that. Like, oh, they just buried them and tried to forget about it. So they've been studying the issue for 70 years, studying technology for 70 years. Um, and beyond that, it's hard to go. Have they had any direct contact, sort of formal contact? We don't know. Lots of rumors, don't know. Any agreements, rumors, don't know. Um, how far have they gone with the study of this technology? Don't know. Have they engaged contactees? There's evidence that they have, but to what degree, we don't know. And so that's kind of the best answer that I can give to you. But the most important aspect of that answer that your listeners need to know is that the United States government has been known about non-human intelligence technology built and controlled and or piloted by non-human intelligence from somewhere, the odds heavily favoring another planetary system since no later than July of 1947.
Now, how many people are in the know at the heart of government? Because it must be an incredibly small circle of people. You know, we sit here in 2022, and it's pretty much impossible for things not to get out to the media at some point. You
Let
know,
me
with
get out to the
social
media.
media and
Sure. Well, no,
technology.
no. For the last 75 years, things have been getting out to the media, getting out to the public.
Mm,
Again, this is not like we have a secret nuclear bomber program going on and absolutely nobody even knows that it's happening and nobody knows where it is and everybody's classified. This is an effort, this is an embargo. It's like the embargo of Cuba. They've embargoed Cuba and by and large you can't go there, but everybody knows there's a Cuba, right? Okay. And it's kind of like that. They've embargoed the formal acknowledgement of the issue, but increasingly every year since 47, more and more people know. Yeah, there is this real thing happening. So uh, the way I like to describe it, and the way I like to answer that question, is that for 75 years there have been people throughout government who had a need to know that have known about this, and not just in one place, in multiple places. Air Force, Navy, certainly the Pentagon, some of the intelligence agencies, even members of Congress, all right, that have known. And it, because they had a need to know. Now, I guess you could say they were read in. And the understanding was this is absolutely classified and you do not go public. And they didn't. Remember, this is why I call it a truth embargo. This is not some illegal conspiracy thing. It is a legal national security policy that we need to embargo this issue, just like we made the creation, development of the stealth bomber incredibly classified and secret. This can't be quite that secret and secret, but it is still a classified issue, and these people have honored that. All right. Now, so how many people throughout the 76 years have been in the know? I'm sure that when we find out more details, we will be a little shocked at how many there are. And so you've got that group. And so that's at the core center. And again, I'm speaking historically, all the way back to 76, but also including right now. And I think as we move forward in time, perhaps the number of people in the need to know or that have that knowledge is grown. But then outside that circle is another group that they're not, quote, in the right, haven't, they don't quite have a need to know. They're not directly involved in engaging the issue, but through their interactions and what have you in their work, and they've been told. It's the old elbow at the cocktail party. Um, had a couple of drinks and when somebody that's working over wherever and kind of just sort of lets it be known, yeah, that we're dealing with this issue and doesn't say, and they've just learned that way. And there's probably a number of people in that category, and then after that is even another group as you expand the circle who just figured it out. In other words, they're paying attention wherever they're working, whether it's Air Force, Navy, Department of State, DoD. They can read books. All the thousands of books that have been written on this subject and all the research that's
mm,
been done by the public sector for 75 years is fully available to anybody, including people that work at the Pentagon. They can read Stan Friedman, they can read Richard Dolan, they can watch documentaries. And so one way or another, they've just figured it out on their own. All right, fine. Are they going to do anything about it? Pretty much not. All right. So the total number of people within the full scope of the U.S. government and its agencies and its military services that are basically their position, if you could privately engage them about the reality of the extraterrestrial presence, this non-human intelligence, is large.
Mm.
And when it's possible for them to all speak freely, we'll find out how just large it is.
Wow, it's fascinating. So the question, I'm sure you've been asked this before, but is why? You know, why a truth embargo? Is it that the public wouldn't be able to? Well, there's concern that the wider public would panic and governments would lose control on, basic civil day-to-day life, or is it
No,
about? Is it
that's not it.
about? Yeah, tell me. I have
No,
no
it's not.
idea.
These are among the many excuses that kind of get tossed out there as part of the truth embargo, right? Meaning a lot of those are aimed inwardly, meaning here's the reasons why you need to honor these understandings and not violate your security agreements and NDAs and what have you. All right. But in terms of why they did it, nah, wasn't about that. We had just gone through World War II, and a lot of the people that were in World War II were in World War One. I mean, we've seen hell on earth. Um, so the idea that the human race, which has just gone through in the span of approximately 25 years, two massive world wars, are going to fall apart because they learn that there's non-human intelligence. Ridiculous. By the way,
Mm.
a whole bunch of people in Roswell found out about it. A lot of civilians and so forth, and they didn't fall apart. They didn't go crazy. No, no. The basic reason is, I think, pretty straightforward. It is pure national security. But to understand that, you really need to go back in time and just try to put yourself in 1947, which, you know, it's not easy to do. Okay. I was born in 1946, so I've been around a while on this issue, but you have to put yourself in their shoes. And so it's July of 1947. It's 2 years, a little under 2 years after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We have already, our intelligence community already is quite aware that the Soviet Union, which, while they helped us win the war, the way it worked out afterwards, they were going to become our next enemy. And we were partially responsible for that. We did not handle that well. But then the Soviet Union was being run by Stalin, so it was not going to be easy to deal with. We knew that they had the nuclear weapon secrets. We knew that they'd been working on it some, but they got more stuff. There were several spies in the Manhattan Project. All right. So we knew that they were developing their own bomb. We also knew that they had German missile scientists like we got. We had our paperclip, they had whatever they called it. And so they're underway to build their bombs, and they are also working on missiles like us. And and I'm sure everybody that was dealing with national security understood that those bombs were eventually going to be put on top of those missiles, and they were going to become the next major weapon. So they're staring down the barrel of the ramp up to World War III. And anybody after going through or understanding World War I, World War II, the idea we couldn't have a World War III, you'd have to be an idiot. And so this is existential now. Okay. By the way, there was also an iron curtain over Europe, as Winston Churchill called it, and the lines were being drawn. This is what they were staring down. And suddenly, if there hadn't been a crash before, and there's some evidence that there might have been a crash prior to 47, Cape Girardeau, couple, if that happened, let's just say that it was really contained, meaning very, very few people know about it. So, but there's not enough. I can't. There's no certainty there. So let's just talk Roswell. Suddenly, a non-human built craft is obtained. There it is, and they've got the bodies. And so the initial reaction is we got to contain this. Now they almost didn't. We came within an inch of learning about the ET presence in 1947. The press release went out from the Roswell Army Air Force Base. It started getting spread around the country. It was being news articles were being written in significant papers, but within hours of that press release, the command came down almost certainly from Truman to General Ramey in Dallas Fort Worth. Deal with this, contain this, and they quickly brought you know Jesse Marcel Sr. and some of the wreckage to Fort Worth and held another press conference later that day in which they said, no, it's a weather balloon. And the press backed off and they contained it. Okay, that's how close we came to disclosure in 1947. Once they got that under control, and the reason they did that at minimal was like, look, whoever put that press release out was, by the way, the person that put the press release out wasn't punished. I don't think they felt they did anything wrong, but they realized, my God, uh, we've got to know more about this. We have to understand what do we got here. What are these entities? How many are there? What is their intention? What is this? What are the implications of this technology? Before we start going around telling people, "Oh, good, we captured a saucer, aren't we special?" We have got to fully understand this, particularly given that there could be other crashes. There may be this tech could be elsewhere. The Soviet Union could have it. So let's just contain it until we have a better understanding, and then we'll make a decision about what to do with it. So that's what began the policy that I eventually called truth embargo. Now, at the time, 47, they couldn't see into the future. They they probably had some idea that, well, maybe in 4 or 5 years or whatever, things will settle down, things will be working out. This fear that we have of another World War III with nukes may be better, and we could probably reveal it. But they couldn't have foreseen what was going to happen. And what happened was we didn't have World War III. What we had was a Cold War. It's the first situation in all of history that had that name, Cold War. Never been used before. And what happened next, without getting into details, but we all know, is that what began was a 44-year, it's still going on, but the first component, a 44-year Cold War in which ultimately 9 nations developed nuclear weapons. The the largest number of weapons in stock and available, I think, peaked around 85,000 or so in the mid 1980s. And we were essentially the only thing keeping the world together was a concept that emerged called mutual assured destruction, in which everyone was told, look, yeah, this is dangerous, and boy, these weapons could destroy it all. But because they're so destructive, no one would dare use them. And so the mutually assured destruction is what's preventing you from being turned into, vaporized. That's what happened. And so as that moved forward in time, and as the nuclear weapons increased in numbers and more nations got involved, the the willingness or the national security appropriateness to finally tell the people, oh, by the way, we're being visited, and we know about this, and we have some tech, and there's ETs here. Zero. Okay. In other words, there was no chance that truth embargo was going to be changed. Now, they didn't know that in 1947, but that's the way it worked out. Now, when the Cold War ends and we have a significant sea change in the national security situation in 1991, that was the first opportunity, I think, to change that policy. And there was an effort to do that in the Clinton administration, 93, 94, and it failed. Okay. And that is the result of that is that as we go forward another 25 years, more than 25 years, we still haven't gotten the confirmation. The truth embargo is still in place. That is the simplest explanation I can give why they did it and why it's still in place 75 years after Roswell.
Fascinating. Can you help me on something about the language around? UFOs? Because the term UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, has started replacing UFOs over the last couple of years.
Right.
Is that because someone is preparing for this truth embargo to be released for disclosure? Because UFO has a sort of bad connotation, or is it just a language thing, or is there a strategic
You've
step there?
got it. You've got it. I have been I have participated in an effort, and it's very much an activist thing. I'm not the only one by any means, but I've done my share to try to change the language on this issue because to succeed, for activism to succeed, which and activism almost invariably comes down to the same thing, trying to get your government to do something it doesn't want to do. I mean, if you just every activist movement in history, at the federal level, the state level, the local level, whatever the hell, that's what it is. And for activism to succeed, you need the right language. You need language which reflects the situation. Now, the government, on the other hand, wants to use language which serves their thing. Okay? It's called propaganda. We know all about it. All right. Now, whether it was intentional or not, a number of language issues developed over the years. One of was calling it a UFO cover-up. It wasn't a UFO cover-up. It was a legal national security policy, and referring to it as a UFO cover-up essentially implied it's all illegal, which essentially means you criminalize everybody in the national security structure that is doing this work, supporting this embargo. Well, criminalizing, they're not criminals, and criminalizing them in your speech is not going to help you get cooperation. It's not going to help you there. And so I said, it needs to be called a truth embargo. Now, the UFO situation was different. One of the key one of the key components of the truth embargo, the containment of this issue so that the people would not demand and get formal confirmation was the UFO acronym. They targeted the issue with ridicule. In other words, they dumped ridicule on it. They dismissed it, whatever, uh, so that people would keep their hands off. And that ridicule was heavily focused on the core acronym UFO. Unidentified object was the name is ultimately given to the thing. Okay, and it had an acronym UFO. And so that's what you ridicule. If that is the name that everybody that is going, if that's the acronym everybody's going to use, and you pile ridicule on that UFO, oh that's ridiculous. You think of UFOs, you're crazy. Then essentially every time someone uses it, it reinforces that whoever they are, whatever they're saying is irrelevant. Don't pay
Mm.
attention to it. And so over 70 years, that acronym just accumulated all this ridicule. And it made it hard for journalists or politicians or scientists or people of high rank and station to engage it because if they were going to engage it, they had to use that term. And that term was, and so that it just made it difficult to move forward. UAP means exactly the same thing. And so we were working to get that changed to UAP. Now it's not complete. The UFO is going to be around for a while. But if we could establish UAP as a legitimate acronym, then the journalists and the scientists and the politicians could refer to the issue and engage it and not have to use that bad word. Now, this is not unusual. There are a number of areas of activism and society where certain words are just simply not used. I mean, you can do it, but it is not going to go over well. I don't need to get into these words, but we know about it. Right now, if you want to talk about this, but you're not going to use that word because it is, in fact, counterproductive. And so but we were succeeded in getting it done. Now, one of the things that helped this, it's kind of a historical moment. I'm not being political here. Is in 2015 and 16, I was working very hard to get the media to cover that election and cover the connection between the UAP issue and the Clintons and her candidacy. I succeeded. Over 400 articles were written connecting the issue to her, and we're using UAP as much as possible, right? And during her campaign, late in the campaign, before the election, she went on a popular show here called the Jimmy Kimmel Show, And she was asked the same question that was asked on some other shows of her husband and Barack Obama, which I want to take some credit for. I mean, I was pushing the media big time. It's a story that's never really been told. And when she's asked that question, she says, well, first, there is a new term, she says. It's called UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. And in a way, whether you hate her or don't hate her, the point is she almost became president. That really helped legitimize it. And so as we move forward, if you look at the legislation that has been passed, and the legislation is on the books right now to be passed a little later this year, UAP, no UFO. All right. In other words, we made it more comfortable for people to engage the issue by taking that corrupted, bastardized term that served the truth embargo and pushing it aside. It doesn't make anybody bad if they use it. It's used throughout the research area and the public domain. I get that. It's and it's about how to move forward on this issue in the mainstream and get to the confirmation of the ET issue, which is a difficult task. It's not to demean anybody that is involved in this field back when UAP wasn't in play. It's simply, this is the acronym now we need to get the politicians involved, to get congressional hearings, and so forth. But it means exactly the same thing as UFO.
Fantastic. That makes sense. So we've sort of talked around. You've been doing this for Paradigm. You started Paradigm in 1996.
Paradigm Research in 1996. That's correct.
So how has that journey changed for you since then? It's almost like we're going back to the moon now with the Artemis missions, and space is becoming cool again, and also aliens and extraterrestrials. You've got people like Joe Rogan talking about them and making them less left field and more okay to talk about. So apart from the kind of optics around it, what else has changed in your minds, and for Paradigm especially?
More has happened in the last 5 years than in the previous 70. In fact, more has happened in the last 3 years in the previous 72. We're in an unprecedented place. I could go on and on for the next 30 minutes just trying to describe everything that has happened. But the trigger, I guess you could say, that where we shifted, and I say cross the Rubicon. In other words, we pretty much, that got us to a place where there was absolutely no backing up, no return. It's all forward from there. It's a fait accompli. Was when that group emerged in 2017 called the name was the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, but there were 10 people in that group, all associated with the military intelligence complex, that had made a decision to come out together and publicly engage this issue in the way that they had set that up. And that was kind of the moment. But that was, I guess, that was like where a batter gets set on a pitch, right? The batter's in the box and gets set, and the pitch is coming. The big moment, of course, is when people associated with that group, with the assistance of Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, got those two articles, those two major stories to the New York Times, which vetted them thoroughly and then published them because they confirmed it. About the Nimitz cases and the study that Reed put up and all of that. That was a historical moment. The New York Times participated in many such moments, but that was it. And so when those articles were published on December 16th, December 17, print and online with video, we really crossed the Rubicon at that point. And everything since then really flows from that moment. And it has just been marching forward, boom, 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 boom. Legislation, congressional people getting involved, the DOD setting up a working group, it's just been, I can't keep up with it. And the public is joining in, organizations are being created, podcasts are growing, new ones are added all the time. The subject is now being discussed and people are being interviewed worldwide. This issue is approaching resolution. In other words, we are heading straight for what I call disclosure, capital D, formal confirmation. And this is all, when I say disclosure, that's what I'm referring to. Other people have their own definitions. That good for them. I'm only interested in the definition that I'm following, and I think a lot of people are on board with this. Disclosure, capital D. Small d is a process of revealing and research and so forth. That's still going on, and that's wonderful. Capital D disclosures event, like, I don't know, Christmas. It's capital D. It's a proper noun. It is the day, the moment that the first head of state of a certainly developed nation, probably the United States, based on developments that have just taken place, almost certainly congressional hearings in our case, which are required for this to happen, and confirms to the American people this phenomenon is not human. We have known it. Well, they're not going to say we may have known about it. They may just say, look, we're confirming this is non-human technology uh, uh, controlled by entities that weren't born, in New Jersey or, are not from Argentina. Immediately people will conclude the most logical explanation, and this they're interplanetary. That moment, those words come out of that head of state's mouth. That is capital D disclosure. It is the most profound event in human history, and a new era in human history will begin, which I call the post-disclosure world. And a lot of interesting things are going to happen in the post-disclosure world. And all of my colleagues and all of the journalists and all the podcasters such as yourself and so many others of thousands of people that have been engaging this issue in spite of the fact the government says, there's nothing there. What are you doing? Since 1947 minimum. Every one of them, many are gone now, are the reason why that day finally comes, right? And it's coming soon.
Yeah, it does seem like there's the US especially is building towards an announcement. The when they came out and said that the Pentagon's recovered aircrafts that are not from this Earth, it went global around the world, but then they didn't release too much information about it. So it did seem like they were kind of testing the waters and getting people used to the idea that a big announcement was coming.
Quite, not quite.
Okay, tell me.
This thing is now, this thing is in the process of closing out. They've been testing the waters for years, right? They've been following how people engage this issue for years and years and years. Now, this is just simply, if you've embargoed something like this of this magnitude for 70 years, and now because of developments in 2017, you know that it's pretty much over. And now the question is, how can you get to where need to get? And it's complicated, and it needs to be done responsibly, and you just can't just go on television and blurt it out. I mean, there's a whole lot of complications here. They've been simply working to get it done, which involves briefing members of Congress, which involves the DoD preparing for what is coming. It involves legislation, so to quote guide the DoD. All of this is going on. Not everybody is aware of all the moving parts here, and I understand that. My job is to kind of go up around 10,000 feet and look down and try to present the bigger picture to people. Because if you just react to individual things, this happens, that happens, this report's late, whatever, then everybody's jumping around going, well, what does it mean? I'm just saying, look, chill, step back, try to watch the bigger picture unfolding. All right. And so we've had now the current intelligence appropriation bill that is going to be reconciled very soon and signed has unbelievable stuff in it. I don't think we have enough time in the podcast today to go into it, but there's unbelievable stuff in the Senate version put in there by Mark Warner, the head of the chair of the Intel Committee, that is unprecedented. And once people understand that, and if it's passed later this year, it will confirm what I'm telling you. This is not a game. This is a process that is being conducted in a way that they feel is in the best interest of the country. And while they can't just come out and say, "Oh, by the way, we've known about the ET since then," they're doing all the things that they should have done in 1953 after the big flyover of Washington D.C. in July of '52. They should have set up a full public-facing engagement of the issue then with legislative involvement, but they didn't. They
Mm.
chose to embargo. Okay, fine. Now they're having to do it 70 years later. It's a little awkward because they've known about it for 70 years, but still, they're doing it the way they have to do it. It's complicated, but it is not. They're not testing. They fully know that the number of people in the world that have personally, whether they say anything or not, concluded that this issue is not only real, but it is extraterrestrial, is in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. And so, uh, and the amount of stuff that's been out there for years in both fiction as well as research and nonfiction is massive. And so, I assure you, if the president eventually, and say in January, finally, after some major hearings with witnesses, comes forward and confirms he has an ET presence, most people go, "Yeah, we knew that." Yeah, but we're so glad you did that because there's so much more we want to know. But yeah, we knew that. We knew that.
So
It's anticlimactic.
when do you think when do you think disclosure is going to happen? I mean, I
For,
assume you want it to happen in your lifetime. You hope that that's the
yeah.
case, and mine as well.
Here's what we've moved. We're really getting close. But and I think it could have happened already, but history is tricky. And so after, remember, I say we crossed the Rubicon in 2017.
Mm.
Okay. But at the same time, there was a major political upheaval in America right then. Okay. Hey, happens around the world. We're not immune. So that created a lot of dissonance and issues in Washington. So that was a problem. Okay. But then they're moving forward. Okay. 2018, then in 2019, I'm optimistic. A lot of things are happening. And then boom, we're slammed with the worst pandemic in human history. It's killed around 19 million now worldwide. It's not done. And it's sickened more people. As bad as the Black Plague was, this is going to be worse. And in terms of its total impact on countries and the economy and everything else, it surpasses the plague. Didn't see that coming. Okay, that certainly has not made it easier to get this issue resolved. And then, for whatever reason, Vladimir Putin decided on his way out, before he leaves this mortal coil, he needs to start a Stalin-like war. Um, uh, what can I say? Taking us closer to the nuclear brink than ever. So this is big stuff. And so this issue, it's notable, this issue has continued to advance in spite of all of that. And things are starting to settle down. We didn't have a nuclear war yet, but still I worry about it. So what could happen and should happen is that very soon, at any time, one of the major committees, probably the Senate Intelligence Committee, is going to call a main hearing. We've had an introductory hearing that was back in May of last year, or this year, but where any number of a substantial list of significant military witnesses to very significant UAP related events will come up on the Hill, testify before these committees, which is both Democrat and Republican. It's nonpartisan. They will be military. The military witnesses are the strongest because they signed an oath to honor and defend the country when they signed up, and then when they sit down at that table, they will pledge another oath. More importantly, because they're military witnesses, their careers are known.
Mm.
There's no mysteries there. We know who they were, what they did, and in almost every case, these are solid people, report people, and they're going to testify. And a lot of things we already know, because a lot of those witnesses we've already dealt with. They're going to say things which are going to raise the eyebrows of a billion people. These hearings will probably be televised very broadly, huge audience. That's next. Once that hearing gets underway, there will be more than one. There'll be several, but it won't take many after maybe 20 or 30 military witnesses like Fravor, Dietrich, and some of the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses, particularly Bob Salas, have testified under oath to Congress on the camera, it won't take long. The President of the United States will then have a safe platform, a relatively neutral, nonpartisan, safe platform to be able to do what we've been trying to get for all these years, and that is to go in front of the American people and state something along the lines of course, we are following the testimony of these hearings very closely. I've conferred with top people at the Pentagon as well as congressional leaders who have obviously also watched this testimony. And we are in agreement that this clearly confirms that the phenomena is not only real, it is non-human in origin, which is to say it is extraterrestrial. If you want to argue, well, no, they're from another dimension, it really doesn't matter whether they're from the future or another dimension or another planet. They are non-human technology. That's enough. That's what they've embargoed. Now, I'm going to put my money on interplanetary. There's the potential for that is so much more likely than any other explanation. There are billions of planets in this galaxy. And there's only just a little general relativity problem, and the idea that a civilization thousands of years or 1,000 years ahead of ours could not have figured that out and how to get around it is not a big stretch. So that's it. That's disclosure. And so, given we've already had one hearing, given there's a very important legislation that's going to be signed, it's not unrealistic to think that shortly after the new Congress is in session, which is now going to be split between Republicans and Democrats, fine, which means there's going to be Republican committee chairs and Democrat committee chairs so that everybody gets a piece of the action, right? There's going to be a lot of committees say, I want a hearing, I want a hearing. We could have those hearings in January and we could have disclosure in February. I'm not, it's not wishful thinking here, though I've certainly practiced that in the past.
Mm.
It is a reasonable assessment of everything based on everything that's happening. Yeah, we could have it as soon as February.
Wow. Well, that seems like an appropriate place to stop. I'd love to carry on talking to you. Maybe if that does happen, we can get you back on and we can reflect on this. But I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are fascinated by the subject. And I'll share links of the pending bill that we referred to, and to Paradigm. And yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much for coming on.
yeah. Look. Let's not wait until we have it here. Let's do another one before that. But certainly once we have disclosure, well, I think my interview card is going to fill up pretty quickly. But I invite those who go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, or Google my name, Stephen Bassett with a PH. It pretty much comes up. The one thing you want to definitely go to is under resources, and it's the print media archive. It is my, I don't know what you call it. It's my gift to the world. I put a lot of time into it. Some of the links have gone dead, though I do have copies of most of these sites and that I can substitute. But there's an archive there of 13,000 English language articles on this subject, showing that the press has been covering it all these years. And as you move to the present, the number just in the last 3 years, I think I've linked to 3,000 articles. And I'm talking the major press, the substantive press, not just little friends newsletters off somewhere. New York Times, Washington Post, and a whole host of other fairly substantial media. 3,000 articles, and they're in chronological order. You can word search each year, and so in a short amount of time, you can get that bigger picture, assuming you have a little bit of time, by reviewing these articles going back each year, or going back to say 2017 and starting there and then going forward and reviewing articles. You can see that in the aggregate, the press, and they've been doing this all along, but they won't go cross a line,
Mm.
that journalists have in fact been covering this issue and providing the story. It's there, okay? What the journalism that we need so much to have a democracy has not done is go Woodward. I call Woodward and Bernstein,
Mm.
and send out people to dig and get behind the scenes and maybe get some inside sources, and and rummage through the Pentagon trash cans looking for stuff. They've not done that. They basically, I think, made a decision that we will cover what's out there and as it happens, but we're not going to challenge. We're not going to turn this into a a challenge of the state, meaning like they did with Watergate, meaning we're going to get to the bottom of this because you're holding stuff back. No, they've not done that. And that's the discussion. And the reasons for that will be maybe come out in the post disclosure world. But they haven't done that. But covered it, my God, they have. And what they have covered tells a hell of a story. And so that's the Print Media Archive under resources at paradigmresearchgroup.org.
I'll share all these details. Stephen Bassett, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Ben.